He shielded the enemy's child. Now the alien mother wants him for herself. Captain Elias Vance leaned back in his chair aboard the patrol ship Horizon's Edge, staring at the endless black of space. Stars stretched in every direction, cold and distant, like tiny fires in a frozen ocean. It had been months since he'd seen anything interesting, just routine patrols along the neutral sector, keeping watch for illegal mining, smuggling, or occasional skirmishes with alien scouts. But the universe, as always, had a way of changing the routine. A flicker on the radar caught his eye. It was faint, irregular, a small vessel drifting too close to a hazardous asteroid belt. Elias frowned. The ship's design didn't match any human fleet pattern he knew. It was sleek, almost organic, with smooth curves and a faint bluish glow. A Zyran ship. The Zyran were the humans' oldest enemies. Their wars were legendary, stretching across star systems. Humans respected their technology and feared their ruthlessness. Any encounter was dangerous. Yet something in this signal wasn't like the usual patrol or attack. This ship wasn't maneuvering. It was stranded. Elias tightened his gloves. "Bring us in closer," he ordered calmly, though his heart beat faster. The ship drifted like a wounded animal. As Horizon's Edge approached, he saw that part of the hull was torn, lights flickering inside. Smoke leaked from the engine compartment. Whoever was inside might not survive long. Elias' first instinct, trained for survival and strategy, screamed, "Stay back. This is a trap." But his second instinct, the human instinct to help the weak and helpless, pushed him forward. He grabbed his coat and a small bag of gear. "Suit up, Lieutenant Mara." "We're going out there." Mara, his second-in-command, raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure, Captain? It could be a lure. We don't know what's waiting for us." Elias nodded. "I know, but something is alive out there, and we can't leave it to die." Minutes later, they were outside the ship, floating toward the Zyran vessel. The silence of space was absolute, broken only by the sound of their breathing through the suits. They reached the hatch. It was damaged, partially open. Smoke curled out ghost-like and a faint blue light pulsed inside. "Captain, there's movement," Mara whispered. Elias swallowed. He had expected alien soldiers, but what he saw instead made his breath catch. A small creature, no bigger than a human toddler, curled in the corner. Its skin shimmered silver blue under the emergency lights. Its large, round eyes blinked at them, terrified, and it whimpered softly. It was a child. Elias froze. The child's tiny hands reached toward him instinctively. The child's species, Zyran, were known to be dangerous even from birth, trained genetically for war. Yet this one, it was just a child. Alone, injured, and scared. Mara looked at him, tense. "Captain, what do we do? The Zyran patrols." "They'll find it eventually," Elias said firmly. "But we're not leaving it here. Not like this." Carefully, he approached the child, speaking softly in English, though he doubted it understood. The child flinched but didn't pull away. Elias gently lifted it, feeling the small body shiver in his arms. "Get it aboard," he said, motioning to Mara. She adjusted the life support systems and they floated back to Horizon's Edge. Once inside, the child's eyes widened at the human ship. It didn't speak, but Elias noticed faint glowing markings along its arms and forehead. His pulse quickened. This child might hold secrets, knowledge that humans could use or that could make them targets. "Captain, what now?" Mara asked, keeping her voice low. "We hide it," Elias said firmly. "We can't contact command, not yet, not until we understand what we're dealing with." As the hours passed, Elias watched the child, who he silently named Kira. The child was intelligent, watching, observing, responding to subtle gestures. It clung to him but also seemed curious, touching objects, pressing buttons. Elias realized that Kira might understand more than they could imagine. Then a warning flashed on the radar. A Zyran patrol fleet was entering the sector. They were fast, experienced, lethal. If they detected Horizon's Edge with a missing ship, and worse, a child, they wouldn't hesitate. Elias stood at the viewport, hands on the rail. The stars outside seemed sharper now, each one a tiny threat or opportunity. He thought of the wars humans had fought, the battles humans had survived, and the instincts that had always kept them alive. Cleverness, courage, and sometimes compassion. He turned to Mara. "Prepare the cloaking field. We move to the neutral moon. It's uninhabited. No sensors, no patrols. We can regroup there." Mara nodded, quickly following orders. The ship powered down auxiliary systems. The engines hummed softly as they slipped into the darkness, hiding from the patrol. On the way, Elias held Kira close, feeling the small heartbeat under his gloved hands. The child made a soft noise, a sound that could have been a laugh, or a cry, or a question. Elias didn't know the language, but he understood the feeling: trust. By the time they reached the moon, the Zyran patrol had passed. The surface was rocky, barren, and cold, but it was safe, for now. Elias found an old abandoned outpost and set up a small shelter. He made a bed for Kira, brought food, and even a few toys salvaged from the ship. That night, Elias sat outside, staring at the stars. He knew the patrol wouldn't stop searching. The Zyran mother, he didn't even know her name yet, would come looking. And when she did, she would expect her child back. But Elias also knew one thing: he couldn't let that happen. Not when Kira had trusted him. Not when Kira's life, and perhaps the future of human and Zyran relations, was in his hands. For the first time in his career, Elias felt the weight of a choice that wasn't about strategy or orders or survival. It was about humanity, the very thing that set humans apart in a galaxy filled with war, fear, and power. And he would not fail. As the cold wind swept across the moon's surface, Elias wrapped Kira in a blanket and whispered softly, "We'll be okay, I promise." Above them, the stars blinked silently, vast and endless, bearing witness to the start of a story that neither human nor Zyran would ever forget. The moon was quiet, too quiet. The abandoned outpost creaked under the weak artificial lights Elias had managed to power from the ship. Outside, the jagged rocks cast long shadows in the dim starlight, and the wind whispered across the barren surface. It was peaceful, but dangerous. Kira, the Zyran child, had begun to explore the small shelter. The child's large, luminous eyes reflected the flickering light as it crawled along the floor, touching the walls, and occasionally letting out a soft hum. Elias watched from a chair, arms crossed, heart both full and heavy. He had shielded Kira from danger, but the universe had a long memory, and the Zyran mother would come. "You understand more than I thought," Elias said softly. He knelt on the floor, holding out a small food packet. Kira hesitated, then took it, eyes never leaving his. There was trust in those eyes, a fragile thread connecting them. Elias realized that this bond could be their greatest strength or their biggest weakness. The first days were a careful routine. Elias taught Kira simple words, showing gestures and pictures. Kira responded with clicks, hums, and soft telepathic flickers that Elias could feel more than hear. Somehow he could sense the child's emotions: fear, curiosity, and, slowly, trust. At night, Elias would sit outside the shelter, Kira nestled against his chest in a small blanket. He watched the stars, thinking about the Zyran patrols that scoured the sector and the mother who would surely come. He had read reports of Commander Lysara, fierce, intelligent, and ruthless. No one defied her and lived. And yet he had promised himself he would protect Kira at all costs. On the third day, Kira's abilities became impossible to ignore. While Elias worked on the ship's communication system, Kira moved small objects with ease, seemingly concentrating on them. Tools floated briefly, then dropped into neat piles. Elias' jaw tightened. The child was extraordinary, more than just intelligent. These abilities could make the Zyran see humans differently, or see them as threats. "Why are you showing me this?" Elias asked quietly, though he knew Kira could not speak human. Yet the child responded with a soft pulse in his mind: empathy, a silent answer, I trust you." Elia's respect for Kira deepened. Protecting this child was no longer just about saving a life. It was about acknowledging a being unlike anything he had encountered before, and about recognizing the fragile humanity within himself that dared to care. But trust, Elias knew, was a temporary gift. It came sooner than he expected. The sensors aboard Horizon's Edge, carefully calibrated to avoid detection, picked up multiple blips on the edge of the moon's orbit. Elias froze. The Zyran fleet, far larger than any patrol, Commander Lysara herself. Mara's voice came through the comm. "Captain, they're here. Full war fleet. They're scanning the sector." Elias nodded, though Kira's soft gaze made him hesitate. He had to think fast. Retreating to deep space was too risky. The fleet could outmaneuver them. Fighting would be suicide. But there was another option, one humans had always relied on: strategy, cunning, and understanding. He packed a small kit. "We go underground," he told Mara, pointing to a cave system nearby. "They might scan the surface, but no sensor can reach deep inside. We hide until we know what she wants." The journey through the rocky terrain was tense. Kira clung to Elias, trembling at every echo. Elias whispered encouragements, though his mind raced. What will she do when she finds him? Will she see me as an enemy or something else? They reached a hidden cave. Elias set up lights and created a small living space. Kira explored carefully, glowing faintly in the dim light. Elias watched, noting how the child's energy seemed connected to the surroundings. Plants in the cave, dormant for decades, shimmered slightly when Kira touched them. "You're remarkable," Elias murmured. The thought came unbidden. Humans were clever, adaptive, strong. But Kira's abilities reminded him that the galaxy had wonders even humans had never dreamed of. And somehow, humans could still make choices that others couldn't. Choices that were moral, empathetic, human. They had settled into a tense calm when the first Zyran scout landed nearby. It was sleek, silent, and deadly. Elias froze, hand on his weapon, but Kira moved forward, small arms outstretched. The scout paused, its sensors scanning, then suddenly tilted, reacting to the child's presence. Elias realized Kira was communicating, not with words but with something deeper, something the Zyran could understand. The scout withdrew. Elias exhaled slowly, stunned. You saved us," he whispered. Kira looked up and Elias felt a strange warmth. The child's silent trust was now a kind of shield. That night, Elias sat outside the cave entrance, staring at the stars. He thought about Commander Lysara. She would come, he knew, and she would expect Kira back. But he wondered, what kind of mother would she be? Would she be cruel, demanding, unfeeling? Or would she, like him, feel a strange, unspoken bond with her child? The next morning, a soft pulse resonated in Elias' mind. Kira's eyes glowed brighter than before, and Elias felt a sudden clarity. Someone, or something, was approaching, not hostile, but powerful, and then he saw her. Commander Lysara descended onto the moon's surface. She was imposing, taller than most humans, with sleek armor-like clothing that shimmered in the weak sunlight. Her eyes, a deep silver blue, locked onto Elias immediately. But there was something else there, a curiosity, a recognition. "You have my child." Her voice was low but commanding, speaking in a harsh, melodic tone. Elias didn't understand the words, but he felt them. Her anger, her fear, her love, all wrapped into a single, overwhelming emotion. Elias stepped forward. "I am not your enemy," he said carefully. "I protected Kira because she needed protection. That's all. No one here wants war." Kira stirred, looking at both of them, sensing the tension. The child's pulse sent a wave of emotion between the adults. Elias realized something incredible. The child was a bridge between species. Kira's presence forced both humans and Zyran to consider choices beyond anger, beyond hatred. Commander Lysara studied Elias, her expression unreadable. Then slowly, she lowered her weapon. "You are different from the others," she said in her language, though Elias could understand the meaning through the shared pulse of emotions. "You risk everything for compassion." Elias swallowed. "It's what humans do," he said. "Sometimes." Lysara's gaze softened just slightly. She approached Kira, who ran into her arms. For a moment the universe held its breath. Mother and child reunited, but Elias realized something new. Lysara wasn't just a warrior, she was a mother. And she was watching him, studying him, in a way that humans rarely understood. Not just as an enemy, but as someone capable of morality, empathy, and courage. That night, as Lysara watched over Kira in a temporary peace, Elias reflected on what had happened. Humans were not the strongest species, nor the most technologically advanced, nor the most ruthless. But they had a choice, a unique ability to act with morality and compassion, even in the face of danger. That choice, he realized, was a power the Zyran had never seen, and it had just saved them all. Elias didn't sleep that night. He sat outside the cave, watching the stars, feeling Kira's small pulse against his chest, and realizing that this was only the beginning. The child had changed everything, and in protecting Kira, he had also changed himself. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, a mother would come to understand him, not just as an enemy, but as something far more human than either species could have imagined. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The cold moon lay silent under the distant starlight, but silence could not last. Elias Vance knew the Zyran fleet would not simply leave. They were relentless, intelligent, and above all, protective of their own. Lysara, the child's mother, was a commander with a reputation for precision and ruthlessness. And yet, Elias could sense something unusual in her approach, an emotion he had never expected from an enemy: curiosity, even admiration. The quiet of the cave was shattered by the sudden tremor of engines overhead. Elias grabbed Kira, holding the child close. Mara shouted from the shadows, "They're landing! Full assault team!" Elias tightened his grip. "We do what we must. Kira stays with me." Nothing else matters. Outside, armored Zyran soldiers descended from sleek, hovering crafts. They moved silently but swiftly, scanning the rocky terrain. Elias activated the cave's defensive systems, small automated drones he had improvised with spare parts. The drones emitted blinding pulses of light and sonic bursts designed to disorient, but not harm, any intruders. The first wave of Zyran soldiers froze, shielding their eyes. Elias used the moment to slip Kira deeper into the cave network. "Follow me and stay quiet," he whispered. Kira's small hand clutched his, and he felt a flicker of her ability, a tiny pulse that seemed to warn of danger before it arrived. The child's powers were growing, and Elias realized that Kira was not just a passive passenger. She was an active shield, sensing threats and giving them an advantage. As they navigated the twists and tunnels, Elias' mind raced. Fighting was risky. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. Yet there was another option, the one humans had always relied on: cunning, strategy, and the rare power of empathy. They emerged into a hidden chamber, a natural amphitheater of stone. Elias set Kira down carefully and activated a makeshift communication device. He sent a single signal to Lysara, hoping she would understand without escalation. "I will protect your child. No harm will come to her. Meet me here, alone." The response was instantaneous, a faint pulse, not words. Elias felt the emotion in the signal. Anger, yes, but also restraint, something almost human. Lysara was coming. When she appeared, the tension in the air was palpable. She walked into the chamber alone, her armor gleaming faintly, eyes locked on Elias. Kira ran forward, hesitant, then paused between them. "You risked everything," Lysara said, her voice calm but filled with authority. Elias did not understand the words fully, but he felt the meaning: respect, curiosity, challenge. "I protect the innocent," Elias said simply. "Your child is not a weapon, not yet. Let her be a child." Lysara's eyes narrowed. A mother would expect her child returned, she said. Yet even as she spoke, Elias sensed hesitation. There was a war inside her, a conflict between duty and the primal pull of parenthood. Suddenly, alarms blared through the cave. A second wave of Zyran soldiers had arrived, impatient and aggressive. Elias' heart sank. Negotiation alone would not suffice. They had to act. "Get ready," he whispered to Mara. "We fight smart." The battle that followed was chaos. Drones darted in every direction, sending bursts of light and sound to confuse the attackers. Elias and Mara used hit-and-run tactics, moving through narrow tunnels where the Zyran numbers counted for less. Kira followed, small and agile, her pulse sensing danger before it arrived. Lysara did not interfere at first, watching the fight, calculating. Yet Elias noticed her eyes never left him. There was admiration in her gaze, tempered by the command of a warrior. She saw what he was doing, protecting without unnecessary violence, using intelligence over brute force. At one point, Elias was cornered by a squad of Zyran soldiers. The walls were too narrow to maneuver, weapons raised. Then Kira stepped forward. She concentrated, small hands outstretched, and a shockwave of energy pulsed through the chamber. The soldiers froze, clutching their heads, disoriented but unharmed. Elias took advantage of the moment, flipping a lever and releasing a cascade of rocks from the ceiling, creating a barrier between them and the enemy. Lysara's expression changed. For the first time, she stepped forward, placing herself between Elias and her soldiers. "Enough," she commanded. The soldiers hesitated, then obeyed. Elias lowered his weapon slowly. "This doesn't have to end in blood," he said. "We can find another way. Kira is safe for now." Lysara studied him, her breathing steady. She had fought countless battles, but something about Elias was different. Humans, she realized, were not just survival machines. They could make choices, moral choices, even when the outcome was uncertain. Choices that reflected something deeper, something powerful. "You have honor," she said finally. "Not many of your kind possess it. You risk everything for a child who is not yours." Elias met her gaze. "That's what humans do, sometimes." For a long moment, neither spoke. The cave seemed to hold its breath, the distant stars watching silently. Kira, sensing the calm, nestled between them. It was as if the child's presence demanded peace, forcing enemies to reconsider the meaning of strength and courage. Then the second wave of soldiers retreated, confused by Lysara's decision. She turned to Elias. "You may have saved this day, but your choice has consequences. The galaxy will not forget this." Elias nodded. "I know, but some choices are worth the risk." As Lysara left with Kira, a bond had been forged, not just between mother and child, but between human and Zyran. Elias had demonstrated a truth that even a warrior culture could not ignore. Compassion, courage, and moral choice were forms of power all their own. That night, Elias stood on the rocky surface of the moon, looking at the stars. The battle had ended, but the war of understanding had only begun. Humans were not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most advanced, but they could act with honor and courage in ways others could not. That choice, he realized, was a force capable of reshaping the galaxy. Kira's small pulse had guided him through the fight, and Lysara's recognition had changed the way the Zyran would see humans forever. Elias knew the path ahead would be dangerous, full of political tensions and potential betrayal. Yet he also understood that a single act of empathy could ripple across species, altering the course of conflict in ways no weapon could. He sat down, letting exhaustion wash over him, but with a sense of purpose he had never felt before. Kira slept nearby, safe for the moment. Lysara's fleet remained in orbit, observing but restrained, a silent acknowledgement of Elias' choices. And somewhere in the galaxy, a mother would remember him, not as an enemy, but as someone capable of understanding, honor, and courage. The stars above seemed a little brighter that night, as if acknowledging the rare and powerful truth that humanity held, the ability to act not just for survival but for something higher, for empathy, for life, for trust. Elias closed his eyes, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, but also new opportunities. And he would face them just as he had faced this one, with courage, with strategy, and with the unique power that made humans human. The cold moon was quiet again, but this time the silence felt different. The battles, the tension, and the fear had passed, leaving a fragile calm in their wake. Elias Vance stood on the rocky surface, watching the Zyran fleet hover silently above. Commander Lysara's ship shone in the pale starlight, a symbol of both power and understanding. Kiera, the child he had risked everything to protect, was safely in her mother's arms. The small pulse of her life, once a source of fear and uncertainty, now seemed like a bridge between two worlds. Elias had done what no one else had dared. He had acted with empathy, courage, and moral clarity, and in doing so, he had changed the way the Zyrans saw humans. Lysara approached him, her armor reflecting the moonlight. "You have done what few of your kind would," she said, her voice calm but carrying weight. "You protected her not for honor, not for reward, but because it was right. That is rare." Elias nodded, a small smile on his face. Sometimes the right choice isn't the easiest one, but it matters more than survival or victory. Kira reached out, touching Elias' hand briefly. Her glow shimmered softly, and Elias felt a warmth spread through him. He realized that this small gesture carried more meaning than any medal or recognition. The trust of a child, the acknowledgement of a mother, it was something no battle could ever give. Lysara studied him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of respect and curiosity. "Your actions have created possibilities. Perhaps we do not have to remain enemies. Perhaps there is a future where humans and Zyran can understand each other, rather than destroy each other." Elias felt a surge of hope. It was not just a wish, it was real. A single act of courage had rippled through the galaxy, challenging old prejudices, old fears. Humans were not the strongest, nor the most advanced, but they were capable of choices that could change everything. Over the next few days, the fragile truce solidified. Lysara allowed Elias to stay on the moon as an advisor, observing the child and learning from her growth. Mara remained by his side, keeping watch and helping with the delicate balance of diplomacy. The Zyran fleet maintained a respectful distance, giving the humans room to breathe and reflect. Elias took the opportunity to explore the child's abilities more deeply. Kiera responded to him in ways that surprised even a seasoned human like Elias. Her powers, telepathy, empathy, subtle control over the environment were growing stronger, and with guidance, they could be a force not for war but for understanding. One evening, as the twin moons of the planet rose in the sky, Elias sat with Kiera and Lysara. The child's tiny fingers traced patterns in the air, causing plants and rocks to shimmer softly. Lysara watched silently, pride and wonder in her eyes. "She is extraordinary," Elias said softly, "and she reminds us of what matters, that even in a galaxy filled with conflict, life and compassion can find a way." Lysara nodded. "And she reminds me that perhaps there is more to your kind than I believed. Humans are not just survivors. You can be moral, courageous, and capable of love in ways we do not always understand." Elias felt a warmth in his chest, recognition not as an enemy but as a human being capable of choice. That was a gift he had never expected from an alien warrior. In the weeks that followed, small steps of diplomacy began. Elias and Lysara communicated with their respective fleets, opening channels for dialogue instead of conflict. Reports of skirmishes were met with reasoned discussion. Where humans had ingenuity, the Zyran had discipline and precision. Together, they began to imagine a future where collaboration could replace hostility. Kiera, of course, remained at the center. She became the living symbol of possibility, the bridge between species. Her laughter echoed through the moon's rocky valleys, a sound that carried hope as far as the human ears could hear. And every time she reached for Elias or spoke in the shared pulses of emotion, it reminded both species that the universe was larger than their grudges. Yet Elias knew the road ahead would not be simple. Old enemies, distrustful allies, and the inertia of centuries of conflict could undo everything in an instant. But for the first time in his career, Elias felt a certainty that humans had something the galaxy needed: moral choice, empathy, and the courage to act even when the cost was high. That was power. That was strength. That was humanity. One morning, Lysara approached Elias with a proposal. "There is much we do not understand about your kind, Captain, but your actions have shown that we can learn from each other. I would like you to act as an ambassador, a representative of humanity for Kira's people. Not as a soldier, but as someone capable of moral leadership." Elias was surprised. "Me, an ambassador?" Lysara's expression softened. "Yes, not for politics or strategy, but for understanding. You protected a child when it mattered most. That alone makes you qualified." Elias glanced at Kira, sleeping peacefully in the sunlight that filtered into the cave. Her small face, so full of hope and life, reminded him why he had taken the risk in the first place. I accept," he said finally. And so began a new chapter, not just for Elias but for humans and Zyron alike. Where there had been fear, there was curiosity. Where there had been hostility, there was cautious respect. And where there had been war, there was the fragile promise of peace. Elias often thought about the stars as he walked among the Zyron people, Kira by his side. Humans were not perfect. They made mistakes, fought needless wars, and sometimes failed. But they also had a gift that no weapon could replicate: the ability to choose, to act with empathy, and to protect life even when the risk was great. Kira, the child he had shielded, had become a teacher in her own way. She had shown the galaxy that innocence could change the hearts of the fiercest warriors, that courage could be measured not in weapons, but in choices, and that hope could grow in the most unlikely places. And as Elias watched the stars one night, the twin moons casting silver light across the moon's surface, he smiled. He had faced fear, fought against impossible odds, and protected a child. And in doing so, he had shown that humanity's greatest strength was not strength at all, it was heart. The galaxy was vast, full of danger, mystery, and conflict. But Elias knew this. As long as humans acted with courage, empathy, and moral clarity, they could shape their destiny, and maybe even the destiny of the stars themselves. And somewhere above, Lysara observed him, the child in her arms, and recognized that the universe had just witnessed a rare and powerful truth. When humans chose honor and compassion over fear and war, they were unstoppable. The future was uncertain. But for the first time it was filled with possibility, and that was enough.